Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States, is remembered not only for his great achievements in politics and diplomacy, but also for his simple life and passion for humanity. But behind the halo, he faced harsh challenges, from political failure to the fight against illness. What made Jimmy Carter resilient, and what tragic ending closed his journey? Let's explore the emotional and surprising story in this video. Did you know that Jimmy Carter, who would become the 39th President of the United States, came from a small town in Georgia with humanitarian values formed in his childhood in peanut fields? And how did a boy who grew up in a racist environment become the leader of the U.S. Navy's advanced nuclear submarine projects? Early life. Jimmy Carter, whose full name is James Earl Carter Jr., was born on October 1, 1924, in the small town of Plains, Georgia. This is a farming community in the southern United States where life is dominated by racism and deep-rooted prejudice. He was the first son of James Earl Carter Sr., a successful peanut farmer, and Lillian Gordy Carter, a dedicated nurse known for her kindness. Carter's childhood was spent in rural Georgia, where he witnessed social injustice from an early age. While his family was relatively well off compared to his neighbors, Carter grew up in the difficult economic conditions of the Great Depression. Lillian, a progressive woman, taught him to respect and treat everyone equally, regardless of race or status. These values deeply influenced his later thinking and policies. A prominent story from Carter's childhood was his friendship with black friends who worked on his family's farm. While his peers often shunned or looked down on people of color, Carter showed empathy and compassion, which was rare in the South at that time. These memories are described in his memoir, where he called them the seeds of a political career based on justice and human rights. Carter was an excellent student and always eager to expand his knowledge. After graduating from Plains High School at the top of his class, he received a scholarship to the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. This is one of the top military academies in the United States, where he faced a competitive and strict academic environment. During his time at Annapolis, Carter stood out for his discipline, intelligence, and determination to overcome difficulties. He graduated in 1946, 60th out of 820 students, an impressive achievement. That same year, he married Rosalind Smith, whom he described as the greatest inspiration in my life. After graduation, Carter served in the United States Navy and was quickly involved in cutting-edge projects. One of his most notable assignments was working under Hyman G. Rickover, who is considered the father of the American nuclear navy. Carter worked on the development of nuclear submarines, a field that required high technical knowledge and absolute precision. During an accident at the Chalk River nuclear reactor in Canada in 1952, Carter volunteered for the emergency response team. This dangerous mission required him and his team to enter an area where radiation was leaking to shut down the reactor. This was one of the harsh experiences that helped him better understand the importance of science, calmness, and leadership in crisis. Political career. Turning point. Jimmy Carter officially entered politics in 1962 when he was elected to the Georgia State Senate, serving from 1963 to 1967. This was an important period for him to build his reputation and demonstrate his leadership ability. In this position, Carter focused on reforming the education system and local government, emphasizing transparency and efficiency. This period also marked Carter's progressive views on the issue of racism, a sensitive and controversial topic in the American South. He publicly supported equal rights for African Americans, which caused him to face a lot of backlash from conservatives in the region. However, Carter remained steadfast in his humanitarian values, which highlighted his difference from many politicians of his time. In 1970, Carter decided to run for governor of Georgia with a strong campaign focused on the message of renewal and fairness. After being elected, Carter became governor of Georgia in 1971. In his inaugural speech, he made a splash by declaring that the era of racial segregation was over, a bold move that demonstrated his long-term vision and determination. During his term, Carter implemented a series of social reforms, including improving the education system, protecting the environment, and increasing rights for minority communities. When his term as governor ended, Carter decided to enter national politics with the ambition of running for president in 1976. The context at that time was challenging, as Americans lost faith in government after the Watergate scandal and economic hardship. Carter's campaign was characterized by his down-to-earth and sincere style. He often appeared in public with a warm smile and a memorable message, "I will not lie to you." This slogan was not just a statement, but also reflected the moral values and honesty that Carter pledged to bring to the White House. With a strategy of focusing on the southern and central states of the United States, Carter built a strong support base. He eventually defeated incumbent President Gerald Ford in the election with an impressive electoral vote, becoming the 39th president of the United States. Carter's election was considered a breath of fresh air for American politics because he did not come from the traditional power class, but was a common man with a farming family background. This was a clear demonstration of the power of a campaign based on transparency, ethics, and trust. Jimmy Carter entered the White House with an ambitious vision and a commitment to transparency and ethics. But can the 39th President of the United States deliver on all he sets out to do in a world of change? His remarkable achievements have cemented his place in history, but his tenure has also been fraught with challenges. Let's explore the most memorable moments and the biggest obstacles Carter faced as he led the country. Achievements and difficulties as president. One of Jimmy Carter's greatest diplomatic achievements was the successful negotiation of the Camp David Accords between Egypt and Israel. This was a landmark event in the history of the Middle East. In his role as mediator, Carter invited Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin to Camp David, Maryland, a resort of the U.S. president. Over 13 tense days, Carter worked tirelessly to push the two leaders to reach an agreement. As a result, Egypt became the first Arab country to recognize Israel as a legitimate state. And in return, Israel agreed to withdraw its troops from the Sinai Peninsula. This success earned Carter the Nobel Peace Prize and cemented his image as a great international leader. Recognizing the dangerous dependence of the United States on foreign oil, Carter pushed a series of policies aimed at achieving energy independence. He created the Department of Energy in 1977, a move to better organize the nation's efforts to develop new sources of energy. The Carter administration invested heavily in renewable energy, promoting the use of solar and wind power and introducing energy conservation measures. To demonstrate his vision, Carter installed solar panels on the roof of the White House, a symbolic but meaningful move amid the ongoing energy crisis. Carter also made a big impact on education by creating the U.S. Department of Education in 1979. This was a major step toward improving the quality of education and ensuring equal access to education for all citizens. Under Carter, financial aid programs for students were expanded, giving millions of Americans the opportunity to pursue their educational dreams. One of the darkest moments of Carter's tenure was the Iran hostage crisis. After the Shah's regime was overthrown in the Iranian Revolution, the situation in the country became unstable. In 1979, the U.S. Embassy in Tehran was seized by Iranian students, and 52 U.S. citizens were taken hostage. The crisis lasted 444 days, and Carter's rescue efforts, including Operation Eagle Claw, failed miserably, severely damaging his reputation. American public opinion strongly criticized Carter's handling of the situation, seeing it as a symbol of incompetence and weakness in foreign policy. The U.S. economy during Carter's presidency faced a series of problems, including high inflation, unemployment, and energy crises. Rising oil prices after the Iranian Revolution caused a global energy shock, further worsening the U.S. economic situation. The Carter administration tried to implement measures to reduce inflation and promote employment, but the results were not as expected. People became increasingly disappointed and lost faith in his leadership. All of these difficulties contributed to Carter's defeat in the 1980 presidential election against Republican candidate Ronald Reagan. With the optimistic message of a new morning in America, Reagan easily defeated Carter, ending a tumultuous and challenging term. Despite his election defeat, Jimmy Carter was still recognized as a president who tried to put national interests and moral values first, despite facing many obstacles and serious crises. What happens when a former president leaves the political spotlight? For Jimmy Carter, life after the White House was not a retirement, but the beginning of a new journey, one of compassion and continued service. Life after the White House. After leaving office in 1981, Jimmy Carter did not simply step back from the spotlight, but began a meaningful new chapter in his life. He founded the Carter Center in Atlanta, Georgia, in 1982, with a mission to promote human rights, public health, and global peace. The center has become a symbol of international efforts to alleviate poverty, prevent disease, and monitor elections in developing countries. One of the Carter Center's most notable achievements has been its role in dramatically reducing cases of guinea worm disease, a neglected tropical disease, from millions in the 1980s to just a few dozen cases a year today. This is a clear testament to Carter's tireless dedication to public health. In addition, Carter is also actively involved in Habitat for Humanity, a nonprofit organization that builds homes for the homeless around the world. Together with his wife, Rosalind, Carter regularly participates in building houses regardless of age or harsh weather. The image of the 80 and 90-year-old former president holding a hammer and standing on scaffolding has become a symbol of humility and compassion. In 2002, Jimmy Carter was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his decades of tireless efforts to find peaceful solutions to international conflicts, to promote democracy and human rights, and to promote economic and social development. This is not only a recognition of his achievements throughout his life, but also a testament to his far-sighted vision and enduring commitment to a more just world. As a peacemaker, Carter helped ease tensions and prevent conflicts in many of the world's hotspots, from the Middle East to Africa to the Korean Peninsula. Notably, he brokered a peace agreement between Ethiopia and Eritrea in 2000, ending one of the region's most devastating wars. Jimmy Carter spent more than 40 years after his presidency serving the global community, building an image of a leader who was dedicated to serving humanity. He not only redefined the role of a former president, but also inspired millions around the world about the meaning of service and compassion. Carter once said, "Life is most meaningful when we do something for others." And he lived a life of meaning that transcended any official title or position. However, Jimmy Carter's life was not only marked by great achievements in politics and humanitarian work, but also by a fierce struggle with illness, demonstrating his extraordinary resilience and determination. The struggle with illness and weakness. In 2015, a shocking announcement was made. Carter had liver cancer that had metastasized to his brain. This disease was a real shock not only to his family, but also to millions of fans and those who had witnessed his dedication to the country and the community. However, what is remarkable is Carter's strong response to this challenge. When he was diagnosed with cancer, he did not collapse or give up. On the contrary, he chose to face the disease strongly, just as he had faced every difficulty in his life. Carter chose a new and promising treatment method, immunotherapy, a method that is becoming a breakthrough in cancer treatment. This method, although not sure to be highly effective, thanks to Carter's determination and optimism, went through a challenging treatment process and a miracle happened. The positive results throughout the treatment process helped Carter overcome part of the disease, bringing hope to people with cancer and those looking for new treatments. Although Carter overcame the challenge of cancer, his health continued to decline over time. By 2023, his health condition became more serious when he decided to switch to palliative care at home, a decision that reflected the need to maintain quality of life in his final days. This decision was not easy, but it showed the Carter family's respect for his wishes. Despite the pain and physical weakness, Carter maintained his spirit, always caring and concerned for those around him. What is admirable is that despite the many health challenges Jimmy Carter faced, his spirit and ideals did not weaken. He continued to work with the Carter Center, a humanitarian organization he founded after leaving the White House. The center focused on promoting peace, protecting human rights, and improving public health. Homelessness, hunger, and inequality were always issues that Carter cared about. And despite his declining health, he still found ways to get involved in these projects. One of the most powerful images of Carter in his later years was his involvement with Habitat for Humanity, a nonprofit organization that helps homeless people build their own homes. Carter spent a lot of time participating in construction activities, even in his old age and failing health. He is not only a symbol of compassion, but also a leader and inspiration for millions of people to participate in community activities. Tragic, end, and world mourning. On February 24, 2024, a day the world will never forget, Jimmy Carter, former president of the United States, passed away at the age of 98 after a long and meaningful life. His death not only marked the end of a chapter in American political history, but also shocked and saddened the world. Former President Carter, who spent much of his life serving the community and promoting global peace, passed away peacefully in his hometown of Plains, Georgia, where he had been since his childhood. During his later years, he continued his humanitarian work, tirelessly devoting himself to important social issues such as human rights, education, and sustainable development. Carter's passing was not only a loss for the United States, but also a great shock to the international community. He became a symbol of dedication, compassion, and a career filled with contributions to peace and justice across the globe. As soon as the news of Jimmy Carter's passing was announced, there were heartbreaking reactions from international leaders, politicians, and citizens around the world. The current U.S. President, Joe Biden, expressed his deep condolences, praising Carter as a visionary and dedicated man who always put the interest of the community and humanity first. International leaders from countries in the Middle East, Asia, and Europe also expressed their deep sorrow. They remembered Carter as a resilient leader who tirelessly fought for peace and human rights during the most difficult times in world history. International organizations, from the United Nations to NGOs, also paid tribute to the former president, who was committed to humanitarian work throughout his life. Friends, colleagues, and international organizations with whom Carter worked throughout his life paid tribute to him. Nations that received Carter's diplomatic and humanitarian support remembered him as a friend, mentor, and outstanding leader. They recalled the reconciliation efforts he led, from his decisive steps toward the Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt to his important humanitarian contributions in Africa and other conflict zones. While Americans are familiar with Carter as a president who dared to make a difference, millions around the world expressed their grief and gratitude for his contributions. Memorial services were held across the country, but most notably in Carter's hometown of Plains, Georgia, where thousands of people from all over gathered to pay their respects and pay their respects. In a solemn atmosphere, residents, along with veterans, public officials, and those who worked with him, came together to remember and honor his legacy. These people were not only old friends, but also individuals who directly benefited from Carter's humanitarian programs and policies. Many came from far and wide, bringing with them words of thanks for his dedication to the values we all hold dear: peace, justice, and love. Those who were touched by Carter, who witnessed his determination and dedication throughout his tenure, spoke of the impact he had on their lives. From advancing the cause of the POO to protecting the environment and promoting equality, Jimmy Carter was ahead of his time and left a deep mark on generations. The memorial services have become an occasion for the whole world to look back on his tireless contributions to society and remind us of the humanitarian values he represented throughout his life. Jimmy Carter's death has left the world in shock and grief, but do we understand the extent of his influence and legacy? Let's look back at the life of a man who tirelessly devoted himself to peace, human rights, and justice, and reflect on what he has done for the world. Legacy. Jimmy Carter was not only a former president of the United States, but also a symbol of morality in politics. Throughout his political career, he portrayed a simple, approachable president who always put the interests of the people first. Carter was one of the few political leaders with whom people felt genuine and truly connected. He lived a simple life, had little interest in the luxuries of power, and always put moral values first. During his tenure, he laid the foundation for human rights and peace policies that not only the American people but also the world admired. Jimmy Carter's message of peace, justice, and humanity continues to live on, inspiring generations to come. It was from these values that he founded the Carter Center, a nonprofit organization focused on promoting human rights, peace, and solving global problems. Under his leadership, the Carter Center became one of the most important organizations in promoting these values, not only in the United States, but also around the world. In particular, his efforts to mediate international conflicts from the Middle East to other regions affirmed his far-reaching influence. Carter's legacy is continued not only through the organizations, but also through the values and qualities he passed on. Many NGOs, especially those concerned with human rights and peace, continue the work he began. They not only uphold the principles Carter set out, but also expand their influence to change the lives of millions of people around the world. These organizations continue to be the places to nurture the humanitarian values, justice, and peace that Carter fought for throughout his life. It can be said that Jimmy Carter's legacy is not only the policies and decisions he made throughout his political career, but also the values he left for all of humanity. Values that will live on and spread through many generations. And now it's time to share. What do you think is the most impressive thing about his life and career? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. Thank you, and see you in the next videos.